The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 27th webinar on the Secret Doctrine. This and all subsequent sessions will be available on makara.us under the subheading Moria Federation or MF Webinars. Okay, as is our habit, we'll start by checking in on HPB's travels in India as described in old diary leaves by Colonel Olcott. Last month, we found the Colonel at a temple in southern India trying to speak over the din of an over-enthusiastic crowd. This month, our pair have returned once again to Ceylon or Sri Lanka. So if we could get a couple of readers.
Can you read, Cynthia?
Yes. Let me see if, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Okay, welcome then. Yes. The next day we returned to Ceylon by the SS Chanda, and I resumed my work for the Education Fund. The ordinary steam passenger sees little of the loveliness of Ceylon, although that little is calculated to whet his desire to see more. The drives about Colombo, the exquisite railway trip by the seashore to Mount Lavinia, and the climb by rail to Kandy and Nuera Elia are experiences never to be forgotten. But I have seen the island thoroughly, have visited almost every little village in the maritime provinces at all times of the year, and I can endorse every word of praise that Professor Ernst Haeckel has written about it as fully deserved. And I saw the people as they are, at their very best, full of smiles and love and hospitable impulse, and have been welcomed with triumphal arches and flying flags and wild Eastern music and processions and shouts of joy. Ah, lovely Lanka, gem of the summer seas, how doth thy sweet image rise before me as I write the story of my experiences among thy dusky children, of my success in warming their hearts to revere their incomparable religion and its holiest founder. Happy the karma which brought me to thy shores.
Thank you, Cynthia. Nicely read. Okay, another reader, please. Michael, would you just take over, please?
I'm trying to get Lynn to read, and she is self-muted. Okay.
There you go.
One of the most delightful of my trips of 1881 was that to the hill district of Ratnapura, city of gems, the country where the famed precious stones of Ceylon are dug, and where the lordly elephant rules the forest. The scenery is charming. The verdure that clothes the landscape is of that brilliant tint peculiar to the tropics in the rainy season. The encircling hills are blue and misty in the clouds which float above their crests. As I strolled down the road that passes through the town, I met a string of tamed elephants with their mahots and stopped them to pay them some agreeable civilities. I fed them with coconuts bought at a neighboring stall and patted their trunks and spoke friendly to them after the fashion of the wise. It was interesting to see how they got at the contents of the hard-shelled fruit. Holding them in a curve of their trunks, they smashed them against a stone or laid them on the ground and stepped on them just hard enough to break the shells. One cracked his against a stone, let the juice run into his proboscis, and then poured it into his mouth. A large beast is worth RS 1,000, say, rather more than 55 pounds, and our own degraded rupees. Feudalism still holds its own hill tracts of Ceylon, having hardly yet been extirpated with the change of government from the native to the British rule.
Thanks, Lynn. So here's some more shots of that region, current shots, obviously. And there's a map of the where Ratnapura is. So a lot of elephants in Ceylon, or now known as Sri Lanka. Okay, last month we began looking at verse 9, which reads, light is cold flame, and flame is fire, and fire produces heat, which yields water, the water of life in the Great Mother. So first, a little review from last time. The second paragraph of HPB's commentary led us into a consideration of the nature of electricity as articulated in a treatise on cosmic fire, where DK describes how electricity demonstrates on each of the subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. Also, in this second paragraph, we learned that electricity is the, quote, sacred generator of fire, light, and flame. In fact, HPB puts electricity at the very top of the hierarchy of living forces, the, quote, one life at the upper rung of being. DK tells us, cosmically considered, electricity, or Fohat, is that initial impulse or vibration which emanates from the logoic causal body on the cosmic mental plane and makes contact with the first cosmic etheric, or the solar plane of Adi, where it then sequentially informs the monadic, atmic, and buddhic planes, manifesting as first light, then sound, and finally color. Mula Prakriti, the noumenal homogeneous substantive realm, is brought into the specific diversity of form by Fohat. So we covered this last week, and now let's move on, and we'll take a closer look at light, which HPB tells us is the essence of our divine ancestors. And DK tells us causes spheroidal objectivity, which is the birth of the sun. Referencing this birth, DK says, and let's get a reader for this.
Individualization is literally the coming together out of the darkness of abstraction of the two factors of spirit and matter by means of a third factor, the intelligent will, purpose, and action of an entity. By the approximation of these two poles, light is produced. A flame shines forth. A sphere of radiant glory is seen, which gradually increases the intensity of its light, its heat, and its radiance until capacity is reached, or that which we call perfection. We should note and distinguish the words light, heat, and radiance, which are the distinctive features of all individualized entities, from God to men. Treatise on Cosmic Fire 345.
Thanks, Karen. So light, which DK says has a close connection with and uses as a medium the second ether, marks the first level of diversification of Fohatic, or electrical energy, on the cosmic physical plane. It's interesting to follow the, quote, band of brothers described in the old commentary in Rays and Initiations as they ascend up through the higher etheric subplanes. Could we get a reader for Rule 9?
Rule 9 for disciples and initiates. Let the group know that there are no other selves. Let the group know that there is no color, only light. And then let darkness take the place of light, hiding all difference, blotting out all form. Then, at the place of tension and at that darkest point, let the group see a point of clear, cold fire, and in that fire, right at its very heart, let the one initiator appear whose star shone forth when the door first was passed.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions about this? You can just feel their experience in this as it's charted as they pass upwards through the through these subplanes. First color, and then they go beyond color. He doesn't mention sound in this, but I'm sure that sound was the silent sound was accompanying their journey, and then into light, and then beyond light. Okay. So now let's look at this chart. One way that light diversifies is through the 12 qualities of the light of the zodiacal signs, which is it's a fascinating way to study the signs. It's a little different take on the nature of the signs. I think adds to our understanding of the signs. Could we get a reader for these first 6 qualities?
Go ahead, Lorraine.
1. Aries, the light of life itself. This is a dim point of light found at the center of the cycle of manifestation, faint and flickering. It is the searchlight of the logos, seeking that which can be used for divine expression. 2. Taurus, the penetrating light of the past. This is a beam of light streaming forth from the point in Aries and revealing the area of light control. 3. Gemini, the light of interplay. This is a line of light beams revealing that which opposes or the basic duality of manifestation, relationship of spirit and of form. It is the conscious light of that relationship. 4. Cancer, the light within the form. This is a diffused light of substance itself, the dark light of matter, referred to in the Secret Doctrine. It is the light awaiting the stimulation coming from the soul light. 5. Leo, the light of the soul, a reflected point of light logoic or divine. The light diffused in Cancer focuses and reveals eventually a point. 6. Virgo, the blended dual light. 2 lights are seen, bright and strong, the light of form. 1 faint and dim, the light of God. This light is distinguished by a waxing of one and the waning of the other. It differs from the light in Gemini.
And another reader.
7. Libra, the light that moves to rest. This is the light that oscillates until a point of balance is achieved. It is the light which is distinguished by a moving up and down. 8. Scorpio, the light of day. This is the place where 3 lights meet: the light of form, the light of soul, and the light of life. They meet, they blend, they rise. 9. Sagittarius, a beam of directed, focused light. In this, the point of light becomes the beam, revealing a greater light ahead and illuminating the way to the center of the light. 10. Capricorn, the light of initiation. This is the light which clears the way to the mountaintop and produces transfiguration, thus revealing the rising sun. 11. Aquarius, the light that shines on earth across the sea. This is the light which ever shines within the dark and cleansing with its healing rays that which must be purified until the dark has gone. 12. Pisces, the light of the world. This is the light revealing the light of life itself. It ends forever the darkness of matter. A study of the above thoughts will reveal the symbolic story of the irradiation of matter, of the growth of the light body within the macrocosm and the microcosm, and finally make clear the purpose of the logos. Esoteric Astrology 329 through 30.
Thank you, Karen. Any thoughts or questions about any of these 12 forms of light? It's interesting to pair them with the esoteric keywords of the sign. You know, for instance, if you take Sagittarius here, a beam of directed focused light, which reveals a greater light ahead and eventually illumines the way to the center of the light. And if you compare that to the, or in conjunction with the keywords, which is I see the goal, I reach the goal, and then I see another, you see how the light is a functional part of the keywords. And if you go through all these, you will get nature of the light connected with the signs. So, any thoughts or questions about this? Okay, then let's look at
Francis, can you hear me? We just
yeah, welcome back.
Oh, did you guys lose me? I thought I lost you.
Well, I think it was both.
We did lose him briefly.
Yeah, but anyway, welcome back. What were you going to say?
That I lost you. I think Joe said we did lose you briefly.
Yeah, that's right.
And we did.
Yeah, so, yeah, great.
So re-say what you just said. No, you're the one who was gone. You need to re-say what you just said. Please.
Is that right, Michael? Did I get lost?
Yes, you dropped out for a brief period.
Oh, goodness, we're having technical problems today. Did you hear me say the nature of the connection between the keywords of each sign and the nature or the quality of the light of each sign?
You were
That's when it started dropping out.
Right, you were just beginning that.
Oh, okay. Well, I use Sagittarius as an example, which, as we see here, is a beam of directed focused light, which reveals a greater light ahead, right? Eventually leading to the center of light. And if you compare that to the keywords, I see the goal, I reach the goal, and then I see another. You see how directly related they are. And it's a fascinating study to compare each of the 12 keywords and qualities of light. That's what I said. You still with me?
Still with you.
Thank you.
Yay, good. Okay, you bet. Sorry, Biel, for that confusion. I didn't understand. So now let's look at a tabulation in a treatise on cosmic fire that describes how electricity begets fire. We're working our way through these elements. The quote, creator and preserver and destroyer. Could we get a reader for these three qualities of fire?
Electric fire is electricity demonstrating as vitality, or the will to be of some entity, and manifests as abstract being, darkness, unity. Solar fire is electricity animating forms or congeries of atoms and resulting in coherent groups, the radiation from all groups or the magnetic interaction of these groups, the synthesis of form. Fire by friction is electricity animating the atoms of matter or the substance of the solar system and resulting in the spheroidal form of all manifestation, the innate heat of all spheres, differentiation of all atoms, one from another.
Thanks, Michael. So we see here that electricity, which is really the progenitor of all of these, demonstrates as electric fire, solar fire, and fire by friction. In fact, the UDI plane is called the sea of fire, which is an effect of cosmic electric fire, as shown in those charts that we were looking at a moment ago. Finally, HPB lists flame, the quote, soul of things. Let's look at the Theosophical Glossary definition. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes. Martha, can you read that for us, please?
Largely interchangeable with fire, both being borrowed from the fire philosophers in an attempt to render the ancient teachings. Often the same distinction is made in an ordinary usage, that flame is a portion of fire, or that fire is a more abstract and general term, and flame a more concrete and particular. Thus, the intellectual and guiding cosmic spirits, as well as the astrally and physically creative builders, are spoken of as being a hierarchy of flames. The lords of the flame are the Agnishvata Pitris, or the intelligent architects cosmically. As the givers of mind to humanity, they are alluded to as those whose fire is too pure for the production of physical, mortal mankind. The Asiatic Kabbalists or Shemitic initiates meant by holy flame what is called the anima mundi, or world soul. And this is why adepts were called sons of the holy flame. Flame is also a projection of fire, as when a flame of the divine fire descends into matter, or flames of fire descend upon one inspired by the Holy Spirit, or encircle the head of an initiate.
Thank you. Okay. There's also what is called the one or primordial flame, described here by both HPB and DK. Could we get a reader for these? The top two lines is from the Secret Doctrine, the bottom two lines from Raised Initiations.
Trudy, can you read that for us, please?
Lift up my head, all anew. Dost thou see one, or countless lights above thee, burning in the dark midnight sky? I sense one flame, O Guru Deva. I see countless undetouched sparks shining in it.
Go ahead.
Three times the fire envelopes, 3 times the sun recedes. At time the force the work is done, and naught is left, save flame primordial. That flame absorbs, revolves, receives, and remains. When all that is has traversed the flame, the time is not.
Thank you. This last sentence points to a deep mystery, suggesting that there is a path through flame, as though essentially flame is all there is. And finally, this excerpt from Stanza 7 in a treatise on cosmic fire describes the lords of flame, flame as the embodied soul, as well as the Lord of Flame himself, Sanat Kumara. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Lorraine, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, from stanza 7. The lords of flame look on. They chant aloud. The time is come, which let the flame become the fire and let the light shine forth. The effort of the flame within the crystal cave becometh ever greater. The cry goes forth for other aid from other flaming souls. The response comes. The Lord of Flame, the Ancient One, the mighty Lord of Fire, the point of blue within the hidden diamond, the youth of timeless eons, assisteth in the work. The inner burning light and the outer waiting fire, together with the rod, meet on the sphere of crystal, and lo, the work is done. The crystal rends and quivers. PCF 22.
So, though in some instances the terms fire, light, and flame are interchangeable, they do have specific meaning and usage, and all find their source in fohat, or electricity. Okay, onward back to the commentary. Can we get a reader for this paragraph, please?
Antonella, can you, there you go. Thank you.
Yes. Now, why is light called in the stanzas cold flame? Because in the order of cosmic evolution, as taught by the occultist, the energy that actuates matter after its first formation into atoms is generated on our plane by cosmic heat. And because cosmos, in the sense of dissociated matter, was not before that period, the first primordial matter, eternal and coeval with space, which has neither a beginning nor an end, is neither hot nor cold, but is of its own special nature, says the commentary book 2. Heat and cold are relative qualities and pertain to the realms of the manifested worlds, which all proceed from the manifested Hyle, which in its absolutely latent aspect is referred to as the cold virgin, and when awakened to life, as the mother.
Thank you, Antonella. Any thoughts or questions about this paragraph? For a better understanding of cold flame, we'll turn back to the final lines of an old commentary that appears in the proem. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Britta, can you read that for us, please?
I'll try, thank you. The germ is invisible and fiery. The root, the plane of the circle, is cool. But during evolution and Manvantara, her garment is cold and radiant. Hot breath is the father who devours the progeny of the many-faced element, heterogeneous, and leaves the single.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, and leaves the single-faced ones, homogeneous. Cool breath is the mother who conceives, forms, brings forth, and receives them back into her bosom to reform them at the dawn of the day of Brahma or Manvantara.
Thank you. So any thoughts or questions about this line from the poem? Cool breath or cold flame is the mother aspect from which springs the first singularity, which is Brahma or Oya, Ohu, the younger. It comes by many other names, Avalokiteshvara, right? It's that first singularity and always stands in a noumenal and thus virginal relationship to the hot breath of the creative aspect. That is to say that the cool breath or cold flame stands in this virginal relationship, right? The idea that the terms hot and cold are relative qualities, as she describes here, and thus become irrelevant when referencing primordial matter, speaks to the supersensuous nature of these noumenal realms. So heat does not exist because there is no third aspect or fire by friction to generate heat, right? So here we have a theosophical glossary definition of Heil, at least that's how you say it in English. I bet in European languages it would be like Antonella pronounced it, which or Hele, but in English I looked it up and it's just Heil. I also like Merriam-Webster's definition of Heil, which states simply, Heil is that which receives form or determination from outside itself, right? It's passive in that way. So could we get a reader for this chart?
Helen, can you read that for us, please?
Sorry, I have a throat problem.
Okay. Thank you. We'll try somebody else.
Three down.
Yeah. Joanne, can you read that for us? It looks like you're self-muted. Okay, that's not happening. So let's go to
Hyle, Greek, primordial matter as first manifested in and from chaos, but as yet undifferentiated. The mother, paired with spirit as father, a Pythagorean word, and according to Plutarch, one of the lower tetracts, how do you say that?
Detractus.
Tetractus, consisting of two agathon, the good, nous, intelligence, psyche, soul, and hyle, matter, equivalent to ilus.
Right, it's another word for it, ilus, or I'm not sure how you pronounce it, ilus. So the numbers are very significant here too.
Francis?
Yeah, Michael.
Perhaps Anne Veronica can enlighten us as to the correct pronunciation.
Of what, Hyle?
Of all these Greek words.
Oh, okay. If she'd like.
Anne Veronica, you're self-muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, hello. All these words are Greek. Agathon, the good, means somebody, something that is very pure. Nous is for us the mind. Psyche is the soul, and ili is the matter for us.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much for that. And thank you, Michael, for thinking of that. That's great. So it's, did you say psyche? Psyche for soul?
Psyche.
Psyche. Okay. Healy, Healy, and psyche. Nous, and you pronounce the S, right?
Nous.
Yeah. And then agathon?
Agathon.
Agathon. Okay. Thank you. That's
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions about this chart or this idea? I was about to say that the numbers are very significant, of course. In other words, it's not just that they come one after the other, but oneness in unity is very much connected with this agathon concept. And nous, or intelligent, which is inherently requires that which is reflected upon, is the nature of intelligence. And then the soul aspect being that which is born of deity and matter, that third aspect, not in the sense of the third principle, but the third to arrive, and the nature of the Trinity is psyche. Never said it that way. Psyche, we all see in English it's psyche. And then Healy is primordial matter as opposed to specific differentiated matter. This is well, as I said from Merriam-Webster, that which is able to receive the impress. It's that which receives form or determination from outside itself. So it's very receptive of impress. Okay, next up, could we get a reader for this paragraph?
Lorraine, can you do that one for us, please?
Yes. The ancient Western cosmogonic myths state that at first there was but cold mist, which was the father, and the prolific slime, the mother, Elos or Ili, from which crept forth the mundane snake, matter. Isis, Volume 1, page 146. Primordial matter, then, before it emerges from the plane of the never manifesting and awakens to the thrill of action under the impulse of Thohat, is but a cool radiance, colorless, formless, tasteless, and devoid. Even such are her firstborn, the four sons, who are one and become seven, the entities by whose qualifications and names the ancient Eastern occultists called the four of the seven primal centers of forces, or atoms, that developed later into the great cosmic elements, now divided into the 70 or so sub-elements known to science.
Any thoughts or questions about this? Even though she references the outer elements, these these four are completely non-materialistic in every way, right? But she gets into that later. Any thoughts about this? So here we have three stages described. We have pure homogeneity, a cool radiance, colorless, formless, tasteless, and devoid of every quality and aspect. Second, we have the awakening of the, quote, thrill of action under the impulse of Fohat. And third, her firstborn, the four sons, who are one and become seven. The numbers here are those in verse 7, because they are describing the same thing. The one is 4, and 4 takes to itself 3, and the union produces the sapta, in whom are the 7. This is a result of the initial work of Fohat, who delineates the 4 aspects of the one in time and space, and then extends those 4 downward or outward to include the 3 lower cosmic subplanes, or the 3 lower cosmic physical subplanes, however, at whatever level you're talking about. So any thoughts or questions about this, this paragraph before we move on?
Francis.
Yeah.
If we consider the cosmic physical plane, which in some references is the planes of consciousness, what this portion of the paragraph is referencing has not yet descended to that cosmic physical plane.
Yeah. Are you saying that it's not yet?
It has not yet materialized down to the cosmic physical plane.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, it really depends on whether you look at these stanzas from a cosmic point of view or from a systemic point of view, right? Which is, it's been indicated that these stanzas are referring to our solar logos, and therefore the pralaya and the manvantara being described are somewhat different than the true beginnings of all manifestation in all universes, you could say, the multiverse, which is ultimately the universe, right? If you look at it from that point of view, what you just said would be true, that these initial stages would be on the highest levels of the cosmic plane, the highest subplanes of the cosmic plane, right? But since the solar logos has its being in the cosmic mental plane, right, the central sun, then that would all be stepped down, and exactly how that is stepped down is certainly not given in the Secret Doctrine. But I still think that the cosmic physical would come late in the process, just not as late, as if this whole thing was pitched on a cosmic level.
Okay.
Francis, Antonella has her hand up.
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering if we can figure out the two perspectives. One, when she says 1 is 4 and the 4 takes to it the 3, and then we have the sapta. And we know also that the 1 is in its essence 3, is the triune. And then the 4 is the number of form, and then we have the sapta. Did someone between us, among us,
yes,
make some thought about that?
Yeah, actually, we looked at this when we were considering verse 7, which I think was a couple of webinars ago, which has these same numbers. Let me go back to what's that? Forward to that. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, when we were looking at this, we brought forth the qualities that the one comes into. And there were 4 qualities. Gosh, I can't remember them. I remember Asuras was one, and they are aspects. And this is the first work of Fohat, which is that it initiates this division. And I think the idea of 1 is 4 has a lot to do with the concept of the will to be, which is illustrated, I'm going the wrong way again. It's illustrated in this here, that the very fact of manifestation gives you the entire tetractys, which is 10, which reduces to 1. So in that sense, the 1 is 4. That is the extension of the 1 in the sense of the form realm, which manifestation does, is this extension of the tetractys of 1 becoming 4. And that's a different concept than the idea of, well, it's different and yet it's just a different focus than the idea of the Trinity, which is you have deity, you have substantive realm, which are the father and mother aspect. They overlap, and in that overlap, which is in fact all of manifestation, you have the second principle, which is the psyche or soul, right? Here described as the third. So those are 2 ways that you can reconcile. Now I would have to pull up the old webinar, the other webinar, but there were the qualities that are brought forth by initially the Brahma is neuter. When it divides itself, there are 4 qualities that spring forth, and that's why the 1 is 4, right? You know, but as you'll see in this webinar, it also divides as Brahma Vash and Brahma Viraj, which are basically the spirit and its vehicle. You know, so there's a duality there. It's, you know, it's the problem you run into when you're looking for one solution to some specific problem, which is not the approach here, because this is trying to formulate a philosophical language in order to understand that which is really beyond language, right? So there's no direct correlation except for energetically. So therefore you can see the 1 becoming both. From one point of view, you can see 1 becoming 2, deity and its vehicle, becoming 3 through the Trinity, that is matter, deity, and that which moves from one to the other, which is this soul principle, right? And then you can see 1 becoming 4 from the point of view of the manifesting quality of deity and matter.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely satisfied with that answer myself, but off the cuff, it's the best I can do.
No, I think it's good. Yeah, maybe you said the 1 is 4 expresses the will to be, or maybe the will to exist in manifestation, or something like that. Maybe there are
I think
4 kind of will.
When you're looking at will to be, that quality, you're looking at 1 and 4. And that is the nature of manifestation. Oh yeah, and also I didn't finish, which is then it takes to itself 3, that quality. The 4 takes to itself 3. That's just an extension into the lower 3, whether it be cosmic or systemic, right? So you have the 4, which are the upper ethers. That's another way that 1 is 4, by the way. And then it takes to itself the mental, astral, and physical plane. So there's another extension into 7.
Yeah, it's beautiful, the tetractys that summarizes the system of perspectives of the 1, which is 2 and 3 and 4. Yeah, Thank you.
Yeah, you know, you could go on because
Yes.
that's 5. You know, it really addresses, you could say, qualities or aspects of the one, because the one as 5 is the connection between the essential human reality and the monad, right? Which is the point in the center of this, of the 5-pointed star. So there's another, you know, one becoming ... you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the 5 in the Tetractys is the center of centers. So
that's absolutely right. Now, let's see. Yeah, there it is. This central point, the only point in the center, you know, you can see as the true one rather than the top point. It's just another, it's kind of like, you know, from within, without, or from above, below. Both are simultaneously effective as metaphors, because that's really the best we can do.
it's really a mysteric symbol.
It's so wonderful thing. These triangles in themselves are a study, you know, because you have 6 and 3, which is 9, which is the totality, the fullness of manifestation, you know, in these connecting triangles. It's just, you know, and if you take the 1 off, you have the truncated pyramid, which is also the 9, and that's you know, that's the manifested world. And then you have deity, which is the pyramidion, you know, above that. It's a wonderful symbol.
Yeah. And you have also the 3 external, 3 and the 6 around the 1. So it's wherever you look at it, it's really rich in significance, in meaning, and revelation.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, the 3 outer points, and then the 7 in the center, you know, is the 3 and 7, you know, very much like the tree of life, with 3 above and 7 below. Yeah, thanks for your question. I think that was very fruitful.
Thanks back.
Okay, where the heck are we? Let's see, I think we did this, or did we? Did we read this paragraph?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, then we went here, and here we are. This is where we were. So could we get a reader? And now they're talking about these 4 elements that she describes in the previous paragraph. Let's see, where does she say it? Even such are her firstborn, the 4 sons. And even such meaning they also have this cool radiance, colorless, formless quality, right? So that's the setup for this. Okay.
And Veronica, can you read that for us? You're self-muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
The 4 primal natures of the first Dzyan chakra are the so-called, for want of better terms, akashic, ethereal, watery, and fiery, answering in the terminology of practical occultism to scientific definitions of gases, which, to convey a clear idea to both occultists and laymen, must be defined as parahydrogenic, para-oxygenic, oxyhydrogenic, and ozonic, or perhaps nitroozonic. The later forces or gases in occultism sensuous yet atomic substance, being the most effective and active when energizing on the plane of more grossly differentiated matter. These are both electropositive and electronegative.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So, Antonella, going back to the question you asked, here we have another answer, right? Which is these 4 primal natures, which are akashic, ethereal, watery, and fiery, are the first outer delineation formed by Fohat. from the one, who is the first singularity. You can look at that singularity, by the way, as the point at the center of the circle, and that these four go out in the four directions. Just another way of looking at it. So let's take a look at the footnote, which, at footnotes, both footnotes. The first tells us that the term parahydrogenic means beyond or outside. That is to say, a noumenal form of hydrogen. The same could be said for the term paraoxygenic, meaning a noumenal form of oxygen. The second footnote references all supersensuous yet atomic substances. It reads, I'll just go ahead and read it. Each of these and many more are probably the missing links of chemistry. You see what she's saying? Each of these supersensuous, non-physical substances are the missing links of chemistry. They are known by other names in alchemy and to the occultists who practice in phenomenal powers. It is by combining and recombining in a certain way, or dissociating the, quote, elements by means of astral fire, that the greatest phenomena are produced. All this points to the science of occult or supersensuous physics and chemistry. Oxyhydrogenic, nitroozonic suggest noumenal combinations that just simply don't exist in physical plane chemistry. Though this may seem technical, HPP here lifts the corner of a veil that hides an entire field of occult science, whose realities have no terms in the English. Okay. The terms Akashic, ethereal, watery, and fiery are 1, the first 4 primal elements. 2, make up the nature of the first Dhyani Chohans. And 3, are the very first diversification of the one. They are cosmically noumenal, and thus are beyond any condition that exists on the cosmic physical plane, though they have their counterparts on the higher subplanes of the cosmic physical planes. Any thoughts or questions about any of this?
We got a couple hands up, and then Anne Veronica says Master Hilarion has a lot of information on chemistry.
Yeah, he would, being a fifth initiate. I mean, a fifth ray initiate. 4 and 5. Okay, he's both. Yes, the other hand.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I can't go very far with this because I'm really not a scientist. But I work with an RNA microbiologist in psychoanalysis, and speaking in different terms is part of the challenge in that work. But when you were talking about the missing elements in chemistry, it brought to mind just an anecdotal experience in the attempt to converse. It is that with the breakthroughs in DNA, but mostly RNA, which is a far more dynamic field of microbiology, it brings to mind that there may be a convergence happening in our time, that it began certainly in the empirical, but the best RNA people, from my experience, the person I'm speaking to trained under Bill Smith, who's the Nobel Prize winner from MTA, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. There's something here that may be coming through in our time that changes this a little bit. I've been thinking about the relationship between numerology, numbers, science, and the. It seems to me that here is being employed the primary tool of philosophy that Blavatsky's trying to help stitch together different fields of knowledge way like 100 years before there were some new developments, and I just wanted to offer that without, and I apologize for not having more mastery over the subject.
Okay, the concept is what matters, and yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of cutting edge that it seems to be penetrating into the unseen realms, because they've pretty much, at least to some great degree, explored and cataloged, the physical plane phenomena in each science, and they're always looking for causes, which is what they have in common with occult philosophy, right? And so it is inherently taking them into the unseen realms. Maybe the most well-known example, is when they discovered that, on these, what are they called? These particle accelerators, that the results change based on the observer. And in a sense, that was the same kind of breakthrough, a subjective breakthrough, that Einstein offered, when he was able to prove that all matter is, in fact, energy configurations. So we have this new level, which is there's a qualitative aspect to the sciences that affects their nature, right? And by qualitative, I mean other than their physical composition, right? And I think that's one of the thresholds that's being explored. What's exciting about it to me is that it's going to start attracting different types of sciences. For instance, different ray configurations, not just a lot of hardcore fifth ray types, that you're going to get some other types being attracted. And as a result, those skills will penetrate those new ray personality types and soul types will be able to penetrate into areas that were kind of blind to the pure scientific in its traditional sense. So yeah, thanks for offering that.
Okay, Francis, Scott next, but first what I want to say is that Anne Veronica asked if Martha was talking about psychosynthesis by Roberto Assagioli and microchemistry. She just wanted that clarified.
Mm-hmm.
I was not speaking from that vantage point, but I will certainly look into it, and thank you for the lead.
Okay, Scott.
All right, yeah, let me go ahead, Scott.
Okay. The image that came to mind here, we're talking about these tetractys, is the fact that the tetractys works upward and downward. The six-pointed star interlaced tetracti, if you wish, give me an image of a top point followed by 4 across when they're interlaced on the second level. Which could be these 4 we're speaking of here? If you invert that so that it goes 1, 4, 3, 2, and 1 coming down, so it's interlaced at Star David, if you will, it goes 1 to 4.
Oh, yeah.
And that 4 could be the 4 we're looking at here in these elements. The firstborn from an unmanifested 1 above it.
Yeah, Scott, would you, since I didn't get it, I'm sure there are others that didn't, could you explain how that would work again with the four of the Star of David. Describe that. Just repeat what you said based on how that arrived.
I'm taking the tetractys we're looking at here and inverting it.
Okay.
So that the first point stays. The second line now becomes 4 across.
Right. Okay.
The middle is still 3, then 2, and then 1 below this tetractys we're looking at. And interlace Star of David 6 points with additional points involved.
Oh, I see. So it is 1, 4, 3, 2.
1 at the bottom. So it's just
Gotcha.
it's that interlacing. So you have the upward pyramid of fire.
Oh, all right.
The downward pyramid of water.
So when you reverse it, you also keep the one that exists here. So you have a double tetractys then.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah.
And then trying to work the 3 and the 4 and where they come together might work with this, depending upon which one you're looking at. Because we're always looking at, is it involutionary or evolutionary? Where is it on the cycle of things? And it reverses things, as DK often talks about his 7. It depends upon which direction you're looking from top down or the bottom up.
Right. So
That's
then
how you remember things.
The 3 would then be what you would have in common, isn't it? That's where that would be the central axis.
Yes.
So therefore, it would be 17 points, right?
Well, if it would be the 10 plus 3 more, actually, if they overlap, so you'd have 13.
Oh, that's right, because you have them overlapping.
12 of the center 1, if you wish, but
right,
something like that. Just playing with the idea of this. How does 1 go to 4? How does it go to 3? Yeah. But looking at those 4 being actually the second level, which would be the first manifestation, as far as the when you have the different elements there, the para oxygen and hydrogen and so forth.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's another thing that occurs to me is that we tend to think of, that the active aspect of this descent into matter is, initiated by the 1, but that's not really how it works. It's another way of saying this is that in time and space, the 1 is 4, because the 1 cannot exist as 1 in time and space. Therefore, the conditioning element, the active ingredient, is the very fact of manifestation. Then that is inherently 4-ness, right? So that's how you could see 1 going to 4. It's very much like the idea of the ever maintained virginality of the mother aspect. It doesn't itself, that oneness doesn't itself change into form. It stays forever on noumenal planes at that, in its unity, right? But in the realm of manifestation, you immediately are also in a realm of 4.
Yeah, and that unmanifested 1 that you were talking about, where the 10 becomes 9, the truncated pyramid.
Yeah.
If you invert this, as I was talking about, you have a 1 down at the bottom that's outside and below that lower 4. Yeah. And that can be that aspect of the human physical body. Yes. This is not a principle. It's below the 4.
Yeah, it's another way of looking at it, which also the Tree of Life does that.
Right, with Malkuth, right?
Exactly. You have the 9 above, which are interrelated in actually aspects. And then you have this dropped point that's literally below and outside the creative 9.
Right.
So, yeah, and they have in common the fact that they stand apart. You have the Kether, which is the source of all, and you have this Malkuth, which is the result of all. It's interesting. Yeah, don't get us going, right?
Don't do that.
Well, you got Antonella going. She's got her hand up. So.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Oh,
So,
just a quick add. Also, we could say that between the super one or oneness and the 10, we have these 4 levels, the agathon, nous, psyche, and hili. So it's the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. So in these decades or tetractys, which is the 10, we have the 1 in 4 levels, if we can name them as levels. But so it's another way to, yeah.
Right. Also, you know, with this idea of inversion, you have the new or intelligence aspect overlaid or standing within the material aspect, which is exactly what happens, right? You have the intelligence of matter, right? Which is in a sense is the well, that's the nature, you know. All intelligence is for instance, to define a human being would be, you know, intelligence in form, you know. But it's interesting. It goes so far as that it's the two are hidden, in a sense, beneath or, you know, overlaid by the 4.
Maybe also if we associate agathon to atma, which is not manifested, which it's only manifested through buddhi and buddhi through manas, we could say also that atmic is outside this not manifestation, but also manifestation, the possibility to express the will, atma, is a sort of non-manifested logos or principle for human existence or expression. Anyway,
yeah. And on that paradigm, you could have buddhi manas and then form, right? So these 3 top ones could be renamed buddhi manas and then the form aspect. And you wouldn't be in a different place. You would just be looking at it, you know, through a different lens, you know, or a different perspective.
Yeah. Maybe 7 times 7 perspective.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Right. There's, well, that would apply to you, that's for sure. It's the lambdoma.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you guys jumping in on this. This is, for me, what brings to life these webinars, so it's much appreciated. Okay, let's go on to this. Did we actually read this? Yes, we did. So then we looked at the footnotes, and that's where we were when we got into this conversation. And we looked at these 4 right. Okay. So I got to mark my place in my notes here. Yeah. Okay. So anything else on her commentary, which is shown here, or at least the second part of it, on anything else on her commentary in general, anything? Okay, so let's take a closer look at the verse itself.
We got a hand up. Let me find it.
Okay.
Go ahead, please, Britta.
Well, if we could go back to the last paragraph with the 4 primal natures. I am working with esoteric astrology, and I can't help finding that these akashic, ethereal, watery, and fiery are referring to the 4 different elements of the signs in the horoscope. And if you, I'm not sure, but I think that these parahygienic and all those chemical things, are referring to these elements. The akashic should be earth, ethereal, Gemini, and the light sign, and watery gives itself fiery also. So I think there should be a combination about this, which it's just a thought, and I don't know where to go with it. But,
well, sure. No, that's really good. I was going to ask you for examples, and that's good. So you're putting akashic and earth and ethereal in air, right?
Yeah.
So
yes. Yeah. Exactly. Thank you.
Could look at, then it becomes an interesting exercise to decide, where parahydrogenic, which is very fiery and quality, paraoxygenic, I think, is essentially airy. Oxyhydrogenic is a combination of those two qualities.
Okay. Yeah.
In fact, it makes up our atmosphere, oxyhydrogenic, And ozonic, I can't comment to that. I wouldn't really know what to say about that. I know that it's another quality of element altogether. Something about the difference in its molecular structure that turns it into ozone. Do you know anything about that, Scott, or anybody? Nature of ozone is the question on the table. Anyway, that's really...
There should be a combination between these things, because she refers to 4 elements and 4 of these gases, and as you know, that in astrology everything is found in any sign. You can look at whatever sickness and everything is there.
Yeah.
So there should be a combination. There should be some kind of meaning that we could use for something.
Well,
Just
we're really looking at the source element, because of course all these are para, so to speak. They're all para. You could even say para akashic, kara ethereal, right? So you could say that the essential nature of the element associated with the whatever sign is a certain kind of source for that sign, a source of a certain kind of energy, right?
Yes, exactly.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's a very interesting addition. Thank you.
Francis.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a couple of hands, but I just wanted to say that Anne Veronica and Karsten both said ozone is made from 3 atoms oxygen.
Remember 3, okay.
Wait a minute. Oxygen O2, ozone O3. Oh, okay. Ozone is made from 3 atoms, oxygen from 2. All right. They're both saying the same thing there. All right. And then Anne Veronica also said, let me get to it. I was thinking that every program on a computer that is now made is made mostly by groups, the lower exoteric form of a group. Science is going deep in knowledge, but it does not interact horizontally. It will eventually lead to a need to interact, to interpret, to combine, and synthesize. And that is where the other rays come in, making a bridge and a connecting the many to the one. We kind of lost you there again. I can just barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
A little better.
Okay, I'm also...
There, now you're better.
Am I better? Okay. All right. What I was saying is that a science, if it goes vertically first and recognize, some of the realities we've been describing here, then that gives them a spontaneous recognition of the outer unity, right? And so that unity is projected horizontally, as the commenter, who made that comment?
Anne Veronica.
Yeah, Anne Veronica. Yeah, as Anne Veronica was stating, that they're not interconnecting horizontally in order to see the commonality that could lead to some vertical comprehension of the the source nature of their individual sciences, right? So fascinating stuff. Like I said, HPB kind of picks up a corner of this occult science and shows that it's there, but doesn't really explore it all that much, because most of it is those who can actually practice it are initiates, and all of that specific information, of course, is hidden, right? So, any other comments before we take a look at the verse?
Yes, Antonella has her hand up.
Uh-huh.
Let me get to her.
Yes, if you can go back to the 4 elements, please. Yeah, it's interesting to note that only 2 of the 4 are with this para, so it seems they are maybe higher. And we know that hydrogen is one as an atomic number, so it's really the brick of the whole wall. The oxygen is 8, and right. Yes, could be really the air. And the oxyhydrogenic is the water, because water is 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen, which is H2O.
Of course.
And then we have, and we have the ozonic, and she says nitrozonic, which is the atomic number is 7, again, very Earth. And we have the 78% of the air, which is made of, I don't know in English how you call that, nitrogen.
Nitrogen.
Yeah, so it's really the grossest, the majority of the matter of our atmosphere. So it could be really the 4 elements, which also the case names as the 4 types of substance, of matter, or whatever, instead of the 3 gunas, the 3 crosses are associated to the 3, how he calls rhythms of the consciousness. So it's, very interesting, this Akashic, ethereal, watery, and fiery, and the 4 elements which constitute our atmosphere. And it's not named the carbon, which is the other element which gives form to the biological matter or creatures.
Yeah, this is pre-carbon, right? This is the building blocks that lead to that. Thank you for that. That's fascinating. Indeed. So, and it's interesting too that oxygen as 8 is the octave of 1, divided or separated by 7, which is nitrogen. So they really strongly interact. The ones that she gives us, which is a clue to us to look a little deeper, and there's more to find when you explore the material. Thank you very much, Antonella.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to close the door. Anyone else have any comments on this before we move forward? Really appreciate what you all did.
Francis, I just wanted to say that there's some interesting correlations in Light of the Soul, page 334, 335, 336, etc., that talk about the 7 divine planes, and plane 1, the logoic or divine plane related to will, as the sea of fire. And plane 5, the mental, human will as just fire, a reflection of that sea of fire. Plane 2, the monadic of love wisdom, as being the acacia. And then I think it's, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, plane 7, the physical, the ether, is the reflection of the ether. Plane 6 is the reflection of the acacia. So that's the emotional, nature.
Did you mean to say that plane 7 was the reflection of the first, or the sea of fire?
Well, plane 1 is the sea of fire. Plane 5 is the reflection of the sea of fire. It's just
What did
called
you say
fire.
about 7?
7,
What was it about?
Oh, 7 is ether. 7, it says, is the reflection of the ether, and that's, I'm sorry, I'm not reading these in order. That's plane 3, the atmic, the active intelligence.
And that is a reflection, or wait a minute, what's a reflection of what with the atmic?
Okay. Plane 5 is a reflection of plane 1.
Right.
Plane 6 is a reflection of plane 2, the akasha. Right. And plane 7 is a reflection of plane 3.
The atmic. Right. Okay, I'm with you now.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
And then in the middle is plane 4, the Buddhic plane, and that's identified as air.
Right.
So it kind of, it kind of gives the impression of those 4 elements in the way that it's described here in Light of the Soul on page 334 and 335.
Interesting. And thank you for that.
I actually have a slide of this if you would like to see it, but it's just basically what it says in Light of the Soul.
Well, yeah, if you want to change presenters and put it up, go ahead. That's fine. As long as I can get back on.
You should be able to.
Okay, I'm going to go out of full screen here. Go ahead.
Okay, can you see it? And is it big enough?
I don't see it on my computer, but
your stuff is in the way.
Oh, I have to pull it out the way somehow.
Yes, I see it on my computer.
Oh, okay. Is it? Okay. Yeah, okay.
See, so you've got the first 3, and they're identified as the sea of fire, the acacia, and the ether. Then you have the middle one, and then you have the reflections down here. Plane 5, human will, the reflection of the sea of fire, and it's just identified as fire. Plane 6 is the emotional, human emotion is the astral light, and that's a reflection of plane 2, the acacia. And then plane 7 is the physical, and it's a reflection of plane 3.
Gotcha.
So I've always found that quite interesting, the way that was set up in those tables. I mean, DK gives us such great tables, doesn't he?
Yeah, he sure does. Yeah, and this covers those 4 elements. So this, this is the entire composition, and higher and lower aspects of these 4, the 4 elements, right? So you could say that since this is, again, this goes back to the idea that this is a systemic, these stanzas apply to the systemic manvantara, wherein when 1 becomes 4, you're looking at the physical manifestation, which is, described perfectly here. These are those 4 ethers articulated by plane. So yeah, I much appreciate this. This is very good. Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Turn it back to you.
Do I need to do that?
Well, either one of us can. You can
do that. I'm doing it now. Let's see. Anybody else want to be presenter? I've got a long list here. Let's see if I can find myself. There I am. Okay. Show my screen. Good, good. Now all I have to do is bring this back up. Good, good. All right. And then we go back on full screen. Oops. First of all, collapse my panel. Go to full screen. Alrighty then. Excellent. Gosh, you guys did fabulous work with this paragraph. It's just really great. I learned a lot anyway.
We have a hand up.
Scott has his hand raised.
Okay. Yeah, Scott.
Am I there now? I think I am. I guess a word of advice or a warning. When we're looking at these listings from HPB and even from DK, we should question the order of the terms listed and not assume that they're in a correct, as it were, order. They can be scrambled and done so deliberately as blinds.
Yeah, especially HPB. DK, I think, lessened that.
Sure, but he does say sometimes they're blind. So anyway, just before we take it as gospel that this is the correct order, we ought to question it sometimes.
Well, and here's a good example, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We have, they're not even in reverse order, they're just scrambled, right? We have 2, 3, 4, 1 from one way of looking at it. So, okay. Anything else? All right. So let's take a look at the first.
I'm sorry. Britta says that it's originally from the TCF table 8 about the egoic lotus and the centers.
Or the one you showed?
Well, I think that was on the left. I'm not sure if it goes into the detail that Light of the Soul does, but yeah.
Oh, okay. They've got chart of the 7 planes, you mean? Yeah.
Right.
That's a must-have.
But TCF could also have the description in it. He puts them in several books.
Good. Thank you for that. Okay. Anyone else before we move ahead? Light is cold flame, and flame is fire, and fire produces heat, which yields water, the water of life in the Great Mother. Using the concepts of flame, fire, heat, and water, we have here a description of eons of noumenal unfolding. Light, we're told, is or equals cold flame, which is or equals fire. But it seems to me that there's an unstated transformation between cold flame and fire. Since, quote, fire produces heat, heat we might assume is intrinsic to fire. So perhaps this analysis is more representative. Light, which equals cold flame, becomes fire, which in turn produces heat, which again, in turn, yields water, which is the water of life in the Great Mother. So the verses represent 2 transformations. First, describes the descent from Mula Prakriti, the homogeneous, most primordial state of matter, to the emergence of the active, creative male aspect, the springing forth of Brahma from the virgin egg. That's the becomes fire. The second transformation describes that from which the phohatic work of diversification proceeds. Remember the ocean of milk from which emerged the 14 precious things? Well, the most precious of these is Amrita, the water of life, which are the waters of immortality. These waters, standing outside the realm of time, thus stand in a noumenal relationship to the Dhyani Chohans and all creation. The Theosophical Glossary tells us, mystically speaking, Amrita is the drinking of the water of supernal wisdom and the spiritual bathing in its life-giving power. It means the rising above all the unawakened or prakritic elements of the constitution and becoming at one with and thus living in the cosmic life intelligence substance. There's a discipline called Amrita Yana, which means the path of immortality, whose practitioners give up nirvana and assume the Nirmanakaya road, thus enabling them to work directly for all beings less involved than they. Curiously, electricity from which emerge light, flame, fire, and water is missing from verse 9. A question that goes unaddressed by HPB is how heat yields water, how the heat of the creative fire yields the water of life. So, any final thoughts or questions on verse 9? Well, if you think of them as we go, you're welcome to stick your hand up anytime. Okay, then, on to verse 10, which along with verse 12 have the shortest commentaries in the entire Secret Doctrine. Father, Mother, spin a web whose upper end is fastened to spirit, Purusha, the light of the one darkness, and the lower one to matter, Prakriti, it's, the spirit's, shadowy end. And this web is the universe spun out of the two substances made in one, which is Svabhavat. So let's take a look at the commentary. This is the entire commentary. Could we get a reader for this, please?
And Veronica, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Father, Mother, spin a web.
Oh, you don't have to read that. That's okay. Just read the commentary.
In the Mandukya Upanishad, it is written, as a spider throws out and reacts its web, as herbs spring up in the ground, so is the universe derived from the undecaying one. Brahma, as the germ of unknown darkness, is the material from which all evolves and develops. As the web from the spider, as foam from the water, etc. This is only graphic and true. If Brahma, the creator, is as a term derived from the root, brich, to increase or expand Brahma, expands and becomes the universe woven out of his own substance. The same idea has been beautifully expressed by Goethe, who says, thus at the roaring loom of time I ply and weave for God the garment thou seest him by.
Thank you. So, any thoughts or questions? Rich, provocative stuff. HPB gives us three metaphors for, quote, the material from which all evolves and develops. A spider throwing out and retracting its web, herbs springing from the ground, and foam precipitating from water. Of these, the spider metaphor is perhaps the most graphic because spiders weave from their own substance and are able to retract their webs. The spider as weaver of cosmic substance was revered in both Africa and New Zealand, called the god Anants, or Anansi sometimes. could we get a reader for this? It's very entertaining
Okay,
segment.
before we do that, I want to say Anne Veronica had typed a message, and I just found it. It says, found in Master Hilarion, ozone is the astral correspondence of oxygen. Oxygen equals the element which intelligence manifests.
Wow, thank you for that quote. That's fascinating. The astral counterpart. Wow. Okay. Alrighty. Can we get a reader, please?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
One of the workers that caught the attention of primitive men was the spider as the spinner. In Inner Africa, the 10-legged spider, called Ananse in Ashanti, serves as the type of the creator of man.
I'm sorry, wrong button. Go ahead.
Okay. This can be interpreted. The spider, as the first weaver, made the suspended woof. Heaven is the blue woof, the weaver of which was therefore the spider, according to the topology. They always represent Ananse, as talking through his nose. The nose is an organ of breath. The god Knif is called the breath of those who are in the firmament. Ananse, as spinner of the blue woof above, is the deity of breath, or the nose as a type of life. The spider is an object of great reverence with the Maori, who are most careful not to break any webs or gossamers. The Bishop of Wellington said, their priests taught that the souls of the faithful went to heaven on gossamer threads. The insect's name will show how this was to mistake the topology. The spider in Maori is the, oh good, the Punga Wereri, where were? Punga where were we? Yeah, exactly. From Punga to anchor and where were to be suspended. Thus it was the type of an anchorage above. Poetry has no finer image.
Okay, so, you know, not to get plunged to earth by this long name, we've got anchor and to suspend. So suggesting that the anchorage comes from above, right? And that's that's what elevates this concept of, you know, the terrestrial spider to becoming a god.
Interesting, it's a 10-legged spider.
Isn't it?
Tetractus.
Yeah, the tetractus, that the outer 10, which reduces to 1, or the unity. Yeah, indeed. And isn't it interesting how spider-like the Earth's magnetosphere is? That's sort of apropos of nothing, but I just couldn't pass it up. It's just, it's so evocative. Okay. In an early edition of the Secret Doctrine called the Würzburg manuscript, which was painstakingly says.
We lost you for a little bit, Francis.
Oh, am I back? Gosh.
You are back now.
All right, I wonder if it's just me or if there's a problem here. Okay, that's worth going back over. Where did you lose me?
Just as you were starting into this one.
Okay. In an early edition of the Secret Doctrine called the Würzburg manuscript, which was painstakingly reconstituted in part by David Regal, you can see here how difficult that reconstruction must have been. We have additional commentary on verse 11. Could we get a reader for this?
I'll go ahead. Right. Appearing with every Manvantara as Narayan, or Swayambhuva, the self-existent, and penetrating into the mundane egg, it emerges from it at the end of the divine incubation as Brahma or Prajapati, the progenitor of the future universe into which he expands. He is Purusha, spirit, but he is also Prakriti, matter. Therefore, it is only after separating himself into two halves, Brahmavak, the female, and Brahma Viraj, the male, that Prajapati becomes the male Brahma.
Thank you. Any thoughts or questions about this verse, this paragraph? Here we have a summary of stanza 3, basically, the entire stanza. Narayan is the, quote, darkness that breathes over the slumbering waters of life, of verse 2. But, and here it is, right? But it is these statements that reference verse 10 more specifically, further describing the two in one. Martha and I were talking a little about this. The idea of Brahma Vash is the vehicle, and thus the feminine aspect of Brahma Viraj, who only becomes male when this split occurs. The Theosophical Glossary sheds some light on this interrelationship. Can we get a reader, please?
Well, just a minute. Anne Veronica, going back to the spider, writes, in Indian mythology, the spider is the one who brought the word to men by weaving the letters.
Yeah, see, it's the idea of the form aspect being woven into place, which is also a constantly used metaphor for the activity of the third ray. If you read old commentary about the third ray, there's always fabric woven, you know, and then tearing through the fabric woven by the personality in order to see the beautiful pattern of the soul, and then there's reweaving takes place. So thanks for that. Okay. So any oh yeah. So we're down to this highlighted part. Yeah. So all these highlighted passages refer to Purusha, the neuter Brahma. Wait a minute. I'm not there yet.
We lost you again.
I lost myself is why. But I've refound myself and I'm now ready to go on. Okay. Here we go. So it's these statements that reference verse 10 more specifically, further describing Brahma Vash and the Brahma Viraj, right? And then we have the Theosophical Glossary. If we could get a reader for this, please.
Lynn, could you read this, please?
And
Yes.
that's pronounced energic, not energetic. I thought it was a mistype, but this is the correct word.
Brahma Viraj, Sanskrit, I can't say it, the energic in a state of action aspect of Brahma. For when Brahma separates himself into male and female halves, this androgynous or semi-androgynous cosmic power produces Vak and Viraj. Now as Vak, although feminine in gender as a noun, really represents the logoic aspect of Brahma. Viraj, although masculine in gender as a noun, represents the perpetually active and energic forces of manifested nature in and through which vibrates the unceasing activity of the logoic Vak.
And it's Vash, by the way. That's
sorry.
what Vash pronounced. That's all right. So Vash means word, as does logos. So you can see the connection here, right? Okay, let's look at the verse itself. That's all there is on verse 10. So we'll look at the verse itself. Father, mother spin a web whose upper end is fastened to spirit, the light of the one darkness, and the lower one to its shadowy end, matter. And this web is the universe spun out of the two substances made in one, which is Svabhavat. In verse 10, the two great forces, father and mother, Purusha and Prakriti, form one expression. All these highlighted passages refer to Purusha, the neuter Brahma, Oya Ohu, the elder, who is the germ of the unknown darkness, the hidden, all-pervasive father aspect, who works in tandem with the great mother, the ocean of life, which is also referenced throughout stanza 3. But now, in verse 10, they become one, father, mother, who's spun out of their two substances is Svabhavat, a term first introduced all the way back in stanza 2, verse 5. The seven sons were not yet born from the web of light. Darkness alone was father, mother, Svabhavat, and Svabhavat was in darkness. This Svabhavat represents the unity of the two principles, Purusha and Prakriti, before outward manifestation. Stanza 3, verse 10 describes their union during manifestation, embracing as one both spirit and matter. The difference in the state of being as Svabhavat in stanza 2 versus stanza 3 can be summed up in the phrase, the light of the one darkness. A little later in the Secret Doctrine, HPB says, the worlds, including our own, were, of course, as germs, primarily evolved from the one element in its second stage, father, mother, the differentiated world soul. So from that, we could assume that the first stage is that is Svabhavat in darkness. Verse 10 describes the union of the upper and lower, which was introduced in verse 7. Behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones and turns the upper into a shoreless sea of fire and the one manifested into the great waters. The two substances made in one of verse 10 are revealed in verse 7 to be fire and water. Okay, any final thoughts on or questions on verse 10? Very provocative verse. Even though HPP hasn't commented that much on it, it's really a key marks that point in an involutional cycle where spirit and matter become one and are interrelated. That's what creates the path of the other. When Svabhavat reemerges as the light of the one darkness, the universe.
And Scott's hand is raised.
Yeah.
I was going to say, perhaps you mentioned this already and I missed it. In the Theosophical Glossary, her definition for Svabhavat comes down to it's the plastic essence of matter. Plastic in its original meaning moldable, can be changed and moved about, mold shape. So it's the plastic essence of matter.
Interesting, isn't it? Other than what's important in that is the word essence, because it's not matter in its totality, is it? It's,
no.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like if you were going to point to any one word in that definition, you'd have to point to plastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really that which allows the two to interact, you could say, the essence and matter and that plasticity. Thanks for that, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you all. We're at the end of our time. That's nicely wrapped up. We can start with verse 11 on the next webinar. So,
which is the 16th of February.
Okay, yeah,
That's our next Secret Doctrine one.
Which is our third Sunday.
And the next Stoa is
Secret Teaching of All Ages.
right, is the 2nd of February.
The 2nd of February. Okay, terrific. It's my privilege to host these, and I very much appreciate your participation, and especially the great conversation we had. It allowed us to really penetrate deeper into the subject matter, which is the joy of considering these stanzas. So until next time, then we'll see you then. Bye now.
Goodbye, everybody.